Falls Count Anywhere podcast. I'll be host Ernest. Is Chris recording this Tuesday, May 27th, 2025, as we are now, I believe, 11 days away from Money in the Bank. WWE, of course, joined here by my co-host as well, Mr. Rob the Genius himself. He's at 1/3 of my podcast, as well as host of my other Rob Genius podcast. And we're actually recording this right now, guys, as we are watching the Knicks-Pacers game number 4. We are in the late in the second quarter. The Knicks are up by 1 point. Rob is a Knicks fan, and yet he's still okay with doing the podcast. I even give him the out. You want to take the night off tonight and watch the Knicks game? He's like, no, we can do this tonight. All right, Rob. So you're better man than I am. Sure.
Yeah, because look, these games, they are very trying for my nerves. So it is good to have a little diversion for a little while.
I get it, man. I get it, but I can't. Like 2 years ago, when the Heat were going to make the last finals run. I could not be distracted by anything else. I had to be in the moment. It does fray your nerves, but at the same time, it's like that's what you're here for. You want to be here to actually experience that. And I mean, you guys have been here 25 years, bro.
Yeah, and it's yeah. So but this is kind of a must. Well, we got to win this one to stay alive.
All right, so
look, if we get this one, and then things are back to being even, then I'll definitely sit down and watch everything all the way through.
Yeah,
from that point forward.
Of course. Yeah, I you know what's funny? Even with that, I still think even you guys lose tonight, you guys have a path to winning the series because like I said, I think these teams are pretty even for the most part. I think if it's advantage you guys have, New York does have is probably the better elite talent compared to two teams. Indiana's deeper and better coached, but I think this is actually a tighter series people give credit for. So I still think even if New York loses this game tonight, there's still a path to win Game 5 and even Game 6. So, but anyway, you guys not here to hear about basketball. We're here to talk about wrestling, of course. So obviously we had a Sunday's main event this past weekend. We actually reviewed that show on the last pod we did on Sunday, which is a very good pod. We are now on the road to Money in the Bank, which is like I said, we discussed on the show on Sunday. Like the calendar is stacked right now in December. And right now, as of last night, we do have 4 qualifiers for each division. We have 4 male qualifiers as well as female qualifiers for Money in the Bank. On the men's side, we got Sol Sikoa, LA Knight, Penta, and then Seth Rollins also qualified last night with his win in a triple threat match against Finn Balor, and I believe that was Finn Balor, and who was the other one else in the match? Forgot.
Sami Zayn.
Sami Zayn, thank you, Sami Zayn. So I guess what I want to say, look, obviously we'll know the other two participants the next, I'm assuming the next SmackDown and probably Raw next week. These 4 guys first. If you had to put a favorite right now to briefcase of these 4 guys, who would you pick as your favorite to get the briefcase right now?
I'd say Solo out of these 4.
Really?
Well, Penta's in there just to jump off the ladder and do crazy shit. He's not gonna win. LA Knight, I don't think so. Because if he wins it, then I just don't see it.
I'm surprised you didn't say Seth. That's why I'm saying that.
Well, because he would be like the overwhelming betting favorite. But I just think he doesn't need the briefcase to win. I think he is going to win the title off of Jay, but he doesn't need the briefcase because he got Braun and Bronson to help him, so he doesn't really need the briefcase to win. So I think right now, I would, out of the 4 of them right now, I would pick Solo.
Solo is definitely a good one. He can definitely use a little bit of I would say ever since Jacob Fatu has came to the company, he's taken a lot of the heat, or what we call it, not heat, but a lot of the excitement in the bloodline since having a briefcase could certainly help Solo here.
Yeah.
Seth is the obvious one. But does he need it? No, because he'll already get his title shot at some point. I don't think he needs the briefcase to justify that. I do think if you look at it though, the two more, the 6 guys here, so there's 2 other spots to be open here, and I don't think they've announced the matches yet for qualifiers here, but like who are 2 guys you would say right now that would be, in your opinion, good spots to fill these next 2 spots going into Money in the Bank?
Okay. Well, all right. So they didn't announce all the participants for Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But Jacob is going to be in the qualifying match. That's all. That's as far as they went.
Okay.
Um, Now, as far as the other, but who would I put in there? From I'd probably put Priest in there because he's coming off the win over Drew.
Yeah.
He's a previous winner. I think he's a good person to have. He'd be a good person to have in there. And from Raw, let's see. I mean, you can't go wrong with putting AJ in there if he wants to do it.
Yeah. But he'd be filling the spot though. I mean, AJ. The thing is, the only problem I think W has is if you start putting guys like AJ in there, like if you're someone that's smart to the business, you know that okay, he's just there to fill a spot. There's no way in hell AJ's getting a fucking briefcase. Like
Yeah,
there's
and also
certain guys that are pretty just there to fill time. Like Penta, we know is great in the ring, he's entertaining, but we know Penta has no shot getting the briefcase.
yeah. So maybe okay, and then also look, I think at his age, he's not trying to be jumping off no damn ladders. So and so instead of him, let's go with let's see.
How about Logan Paul?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's always a good one to put in there. And he is believable as possibly winning it. So yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
I'm just saying, he's another one I would definitely look at. He just came off the title match against Jay this past weekend. I'm trying to look at other names here who could be possible.
Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry, but Logan's going to be in. He's going to be in a match already, though.
Right. So I'm looking at some guys here. So Fatu could be another one, but Fatu right now is currently U.S. champion. You can go Chad Gable. Let me see here. What should I give me all these NXT people here? Okay.
Yeah,
All right, here it is. All right. Andrade, no. Austin Theory, no. He's not really. Would you put Gunther in here? I mean, granted, they had that title shot. He had that title match next week, right?
Is it next week?
Is it? When they go to Phoenix next week, or they going to
It must be then. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
So,
I mean, it could be post Money Bank 2 also, what we know, but I mean,
I guess if we're looking for somebody who would be well, Karrion Kross. I mean,
that's another one.
I mean, because we keep hearing about he's supposedly like picking up steam and everything, but he still hasn't really gotten like a big slot on television yet. So if you want to, if you want this to be his kind of coming out party, then this would be a good place to do it.
What about CM Punk?
Oh, and he's another one. Because now having it, because then he and Seth, of course, they would go after each other in the match. But I mean, them taking each other out would make sense.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the guys here. Jimmy Uso could be a possibility. I doubt it though. Obviously, you can always consider Roman Reigns, but at this point, I don't see that happening. Even if it's a spot for him, I don't see it happening. He's I like the Karrion Kross pick. Maybe Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Randy Orton's another one. Who else here? I was looking maybe the Miz
Or Rusev. I mean,
Rusev's another one. Hell, that's a great one. Rusev. Who knows? That could be a guy that can, you want to put some attention on him early right now since come back a month ago. That's another spot there for him. That depends right in there too. Also, no R-Truth. Nah. Pete Dunne. Nah. Let me see. Rusev. Sami Zayn just lost already. I don't think he'll have a chance to get back in again. Sheamus.
Oh, well, yeah, he's another
That's your
one.
boy. It's your boy. I will say this much though. Like, if Seth wins, that's too easy. That's too obvious and too easy. I think Solo might be the best spot. The best. If I had to pick a winner right now, based on what we have right now currently, Solo might be the best spot now to put the briefcase towards here. Um, the case for LA Knight though, we'll say though, he's kind of cooled off since WrestleMania. Probably before that, he's still red hot. It's just like he still gets pop. But I wouldn't hate the idea of LA Knight having a briefcase. The problem is, if you do that, how do I mean, how do you get creative with that in the next 6 months, a year, with that? Like, can you do something with that where it's creative enough? Because you have a heel. You have, right now you have two. Well, no, well, Cena is a heel right now currently, but let's assume that Cody gets the belt back in by SummerSlam, and let's say LA Knight has a title, a briefcase rather. Jey Uso is still champion. Could you can't really have a baby face. I mean, could you see a baby face LA Knight fucking around with baby face Jey Uso, a baby face uh say Cody Rhodes? I can't see that unless you want to put LA Knight back to a heel again, which is very possible. But why would you do that right now? He's red hot as a face.
Well, yeah, I don't know. He's Seth. Well, the past couple of years, the past several years with the men's briefcase, it's they've been kind of backed themselves into a corner because they haven't had all their men's champions are people that, because just kind of story wise, you don't really want them anybody catching the briefcase in on them. 'Cause, like 22, they had Austin Theory, and that was right in the middle of Roman's whole thing, um, and then last year, you know, Cody had just won the title, and they weren't gonna cash in on him, and so this could be another year where whoever wins for the men where the cash in fails again, and well, the only way I can see it not failing is because I think Seth is gonna beat Jay. So I think the only way it doesn't fail is if you wait until after Cena drops the belt if or it's back to Cody or somebody else, and then cash in on that person. Um, so just I mean, it depends on
Can
what
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because we've got this tension building between Jacob and Solo, and Solo can win the briefcase, and Jacob costing him the cash in or whatever that could happen.
Could you make a case for Penta though? Like this, like try one. No.
No.
Hmm. Not even wanted to. Yeah,
Look,
I'm with you. I have a hard
he's
time
going to be
fighting.
really spectacular in that match. He's going to do a bunch of crazy stuff. It's going to be really fun, and then that's going to but that's about it.
I mean, he won last night, though. I mean, I was saying a couple weeks ago, I was getting tired of him losing all these damn matches. Granted, a lot of it was by, a lot of it was also interference and whatnot. But still, I was getting tired of him losing a match by match. At some point, we got to get him a win somehow. Now, he got one last night, but I mean, he's not ready for to have a belt. Obviously, I don't think he needs it right now currently. But I don't know. The fact of the match, I think it is more so, like I said, it's more about the spectacle of it all. He's exciting. They make the match
Yeah,
exciting and all that. I do think obviously I think Damian Priest. I think Damian Priest come hell or high water will be in this match at some point.
probably.
I would have said Drew McIntyre, but based on what we saw on Saturday, I imagine he'd be written off TV for a little bit.
Yeah,
Based on what we
that's
saw
my
on
guess.
Saturday.
Yeah,
Otherwise, Drew would be my favorite to win. One of my favorites to win it. But I like that situation. All right, for the women's side here, right now the 4 qualifiers on the women's side, we have Alexa Bliss, we got Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez, and Julia. So, who would you say is the favorite right now to win the briefcase of the 4 currently?
4. Oh man, um, that's tough because um, Out of those four,
Because most will say Rhea will be the favorite to win it, but again, sometimes when you don't want to, sometimes you don't people booking you don't want to book the obvious thing. You want to have surprises, of course. So if you were to do a surprise, I think you should do Rhea should not be the one to win the match, obviously.
out of those four, I'd probably pick Alexa Bliss, even though she's already won it.
Yeah, but it's been a long time she's won that though, like at least like
Yeah, she won
7
it. She
years.
won it in 2018. It's
Yeah, I'm
been
saying 7
7
years,
years.
right? Yeah. Hmm. Alexa, interesting. Okay.
Well,
Rox.
'cause look, this is a year where I mean, we had our first two-time women's Royal Rumble winner. We had our first two-time women's Elimination Chamber winner. So having our first two-time women's Money in the Bank winner would fit. I mean, it would track.
That's true. That's true. I will say Roxanne has a good case though. She's starting to pick up steam here.
Yeah,
Um.
I guess. Yeah, it's just well, she's kind of occupied with the Judgment Day stuff now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
All right. So I'm looking at the roster now. So you have 2 open spots here right now. Currently, I haven't announced any matches yet.
Oh, they did announce for Friday.
They did announce the Friday already.
Yeah.
So who's in that match? You know?
It's Jade, Naomi, and Nia Jax.
Oh,
So out of them, I would honestly, um,
I'm putting Nia in there.
South. I'm, I think I'm gonna go with Naomi winning, and I think Naomi would be a good pick to actually win the thing. I think this year.
Yeah. I
Also,
think that's match that actually is a good match for Jade though because that they can cover up Jade's flaws obviously as we've been saying. That's a good match for her to be involved in, but I don't think she's ready for that yet. Like I would put Nia in there. I mean, I love the Naomi pick obviously. In there. So that'd be one of the two one of the three anyway there, and yeah, one more spot after that. I'm trying to figure out who other female on this roster could you can case for to get that 6th spot. Bailey's
is
not
it,
Bailey's not back yet, right?
no, she's not. So she could come back Monday possibly.
But Bianca's
Uh,
not back yet either.
well, Bianca's supposed to come back Friday, but she's not. But she's not going to be in the match. So
What Chelsea Green?
um, well,
It's a
they're
good
on
one.
SmackDown, so we need more from Raw.
Okay,
So
okay, raw one. Let me see a raw.
so Bailey could come back. Oscar could come back. Uh,
Drew's already in the match already.
let me see. One of those two, or um,
You know what? Let me go. Is it Smack the Hotel? The better
yeah,
the
that's
better
what I'm looking at
website.
now.
Yeah, Smack the Hotel.
Liv Morgan could possibly get in there. Because that would be something her and Roxanne, because her and Roxanne are kind of
Mm-hmm.
side eyeing each other right now.
Yeah,
Uh, so putting both of them in there would make sense, and they get into it with each other or whatever. Um, but they haven't announced anybody for the last qualifying match on Monday. So I'm guessing that means I think that's.
Kyrie Sane.
Well, she lost. She was in the qualifier last
Yeah,
week, and
she did. Yes,
lost.
she did lose. Yeah, she did lose.
So I'm gonna go ahead.
Um.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Oscar comes back Monday and wins.
Ooh, Asuka.
Yeah,
I
because
like
she
that.
she's due to come back soon.
Zoe
So I'm gonna
Stark's hurt, so that won't work. Yeah,
yeah,
Zoe Stark's. Yeah, so, yeah.
because she's gonna I mean, that's unfortunate. She's gonna be out for a while. Yeah,
What about Liv Morgan?
yeah.
She
She lost to Kyrie on
last night.
Monday, but that wasn't a qualifying match.
Right, that's a
So
regular match. That's a regular match. I don't
so
know.
she could, yeah. I mean, so you could have her. I mean, if I had to pick out of who we know is available right now, I'd probably pick her. But and that is if nobody comes back or anything like that, then yeah, I would probably out of who's available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would. Yeah, I would have said Becky, but Becky's tied up with Lyra right now with this, and I think
and
they're gonna
then
fight
and they're
again.
and they're wrestling each other on the pay-per-view. So
Yeah, so they already announced that, right?
yeah,
Right. So I was gonna review that in the next episode. Um, so who would you say is the best person to book to get the briefcase on the women's side, in your opinion?
Um, Man,
I
well,
guess based on
okay,
I guess you want based on the four now. If you want to throw in a wild card that's not announced yet, you can do so.
okay. Okay, we're counting people who haven't gotten in the match yet. I would say Naomi.
I love that pick, dude. I do love that pick.
Because at some point, like, look, I mean, she's been on such a great run doing this heel thing. Like, there's got to, she's got to get some kind of payoff here, you know, for that.
Yeah, I don't mind
So
the
yeah,
Naomi.
I'd go with her.
Yeah. I would probably. I mean, Alexa is not a bad pick. I go Nia though, man. I've been advocating for Nia since her return. I've been advocating Nia Jax to get a push, like a massive push to where she's getting a title and whatnot.
Well, but I guess
Um,
the thing is, they just did that though. She just had it though.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't think they're going to go back to her so
Go back to it
soon.
again, I guess. Yeah. I love the Naomi pick. Jade's too obvious. She's too green for me.
And plus, I
Um,
mean, Jade with the briefcase is kind of like overkill. Like,
yeah, I can see that.
I mean, well, I mean, although I mean, they gave it to Brock Lesnar one time, so I mean,
That's Brock Lesnar, bro.
yeah,
That's my guy. Um, this is actually tough. Like, I don't want to go with the obvious, man. I mean, Rhea, you could do stuff with Rhea there with that one, but I don't want to go that far, man. I mean, Rhea can get a title shot anytime she wants.
yeah,
I'm gonna go Roxanne, bro. I'm gonna go Roxanne. I think Roxanne is right now the biggest wild card in the division right now. She's red hot right now. She's getting a lot of attention. So I'm gonna go Roxanne as my winner based on what we see here now, even including people who haven't announced yet. But I do love the Naomi pick though. I do think Naomi pick is actually really good. Like I said, we'll have obviously we will preview Money in the Bank next week on the show. Like I said, it's on cheat day. Like I said, the calendar is squashed. It's tightening up. So just when you think that the PLE is out of the way, now you got 2 weeks from now, less than 2 weeks from now.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining. I like it. I'm okay with it now because summertime is nothing going on. So might as well. As creative with it. So all right, next topic here. Speaking of PLE, so as you know, they announced a bunch of PLEs this weekend, including Evolution 2. It's official now. It'll take place in July. I think it's July 18th or 16th.
13th, July
13th.
13th.
The 13th,
Yeah,
sorry. Natalia, who's on the roster, of course, is actually now, in addition to being part of WWE, she's also part of the Busted Open podcast alongside Bully Ray and Dave LaGreca. She was recently on the show reacting to the announcement of Evolution 2, but she also teased the possibility of the idea of a possible women's weekly show. Here's a quote here. She says, "I would love to see an all women's pay per view, but I would love to see an all women's show. I think we can do that in WWE. When you look at the Raw's women's roster, the SmackDown women's roster, and the NXT roster, and the women coming from the ID program and the Evolve and all these different shows, there are so many talented women in WWE family alone that there's no reason that we can do a 1 or 2 hour show." Now, this is something I think I've discussed on the show, not with you necessarily, but in the past a couple times about, is there, number one, a gumption to do this? Number two, is there enough, creatively speaking, to justify doing a weekly women's wrestling show to WWE? Now, remember too. Also, they have a lot going. They're already spread thin as is now with the shows as is with
yeah.
Raw and SmackDown and everything else. But I'm not even advocating for this right now. But Rob, could you see, is there justification that based on what you see in the women's division right now, that you see, especially on Triple H, is there justification having a weekly women's show down the road?
Okay. It depends on how you it. I'd say it really depends on how you format it. Making it like its own brand, no, because like you said, they're spread thin already as it is. They have enough trouble consistently booking the women's division already. Like they have these stretches like now because they're doing these Money in the Bank qualifiers. They're having more women's matches right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then after like usually they do that going into Money in the Bank. After Money in the Bank is over, it cools back down. Um, they, no, they don't have the creative time or energy to do a full-on separate women's show with its own kind of storylines and all of that stuff. Now, could they carry some of what's already going? Now, could they take what's going on already and carry some of that over, and you know, just and maybe do an hour or something based on what they already have going on, and adding maybe adding a couple of things in there. Sure. Um, I mean, now they have the personnel to do it. They definitely have they have the roster to do it. Yes, but again, it's a matter of creatively, like what exactly would you do? Would you try to do? I don't think they have the creative wherewithal to do a women's show with all new and separate storylines and everything. No, um, but doing one as a place to kind of carry over what's already going on Raw and SmackDown, so you can give it some more time during the week, and then maybe throw in a couple of matches with some of the women who don't get to wrestle on Raw or SmackDown as much, or maybe some of the NXT women. Could you do that? Sure. Um, Now it's just from a viewing standpoint. The only problem, for us watching it, the only problem is that now that's another hour or two that you got to watch. And we're already doing 3 hours of SmackDown, 2.5 hours of Raw, 2 hours of NXT. And now asking us to do another hour or two. And then that's not counting the people who watch Evolve or the people who are watching the LFG, right? I mean, that's just an ever increasing commitment to ask of people. And then, you know, that's all. And that's, you know, and then I guess where would you put it? Because like right now, Evolve was on what, like Tubi or something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, that's another thing. Like, I mean, okay, so you could get some second or third tier channel or streaming thing or something, and they would give you some money for sure. Just like Tubi gave them some money for Evolve. So yeah, you could get some kind of second or tertiary cable channel or streaming thing, and they could give you some money, and then you could do an hour or something. Sure.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, so yeah, I mean the pieces are there to do it. It's just um I think again, I just don't think you can. I don't think you can do a new story. I don't think you got to use it as just as conduit for what's already going on, and then
And,
incorporate some people who don't get
right.
as much TV time. Um,
And,
and
and people also, I think, are going to assume that if you do a women's show, that means you're going to take all the women's material off of Raw and SmackDown, and that's going to hurt women overall.
that's the other thing is that no, I can name 2 or 3 women who absolutely will not do that show, who will refuse to do that show.
Yeah, Rhea Ripley would be one, Charlotte Flair would be another one, and probably Becky Lynch.
Well, no, look, I can definitely tell you, Charlotte and Becky would not do that show.
Right. They don't need to
Because
because
well, they
they're
wouldn't
already
want to,
made.
no, they wouldn't want to because they have both been very vocal and very adamant that they they want to be on the show with the men and they want to compete against the men for space on the show, and they think matches should get the main event over the men's matches. They've both been very vocal about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they are not going to, because I mean, the risk is it's always you're always when you segregate, it's always a risk,
Mm-hmm. I agree.
because not to get all political here, but they say separate but equal. We always get the separate, but we never get the equal.
That's right. That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
that's
It's a great point, though. It really
we,
is.
we always get the separate, but we never get the equal.
And I don't think, honestly, I know it's probably good intentions here by Natalia and many others who think it's a good
Oh
idea,
yes,
but I don't think it's going to be as good as you think it is. I think we're already maxed out on forget wrestling as a whole, just WWE programming in general right now.
yes. I
It's
mean,
spread thin as is. Okay, you're actually gonna hurt your product by doing that. I think sometimes less is more. The thing is, you already have enough time on these shows, Raw and SmackDown, already enough time as is to fit them into the programming. So there's no reason. And not only that, I mean, like I said, unless you're, Rhea, Becky, the big name, Bianca, you name it, who will always be on Raw and SmackDown. But a lot of people are going to assume that if you do a women's show, that means they will no longer be on Raw and SmackDown. And if that was the case, then that actually hurts women moving forward because now you got to develop, a whole brand new show, make that a big thing, and make that something watchable, And
Yeah,
I don't think you want to do that, man.
and and look, without the 4 or 5 biggest names, the interest isn't going to be there.
Exactly.
And then because it's just not. And then look, they just gotta. At the end of the day, con- they have to consistently book the women that they have on Raw and SmackDown. And NXT does consistently book their women's division year round.
Yeah.
Like it's the main roster. Their ebbs and flows. Like there are, like I said, there it picks up when they're it, going into Money in the Bank. It picks up when they're going into the Survivor Series and they got to put teams together for the War Games. It picks up then. Last year they were doing the Queen of the Ring tournament, so it picked up for that. But it's just ebbs and they picked up around Elimination Chamber because they got to they got to get qualifying matches and put people in there. So they're about 3 or 4 points during the year where it picks up, and then but then it often like cools back down almost immediately after. And so they have to, I mean, you just have to consistently book the women that you have, and you have to like put some. I mean, and look,
They
several of the
would
women even
they
talked
would need
about.
more stars, honestly.
Well, it's tough because I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard to get people like to really pay attention or to really be interested in more than maybe like a dozen of them, and because like again when we talk about you only have so much time and so much attention, right? I mean, so people are already paying attention to
Hmm.
Roman, Cody, Seth, Punk, you know, Jacob, LA Knight. I mean, they're already paying attention to 12 to 15 men, and now you got like 20, 25 women, and like people just are not going to pay attention to all 25 of those women. So if you're lucky, you get up to maybe a dozen that people will pay attention to. And then the rest, it's just kind of tough. I mean, you can do you can do a couple. You can get a few of them to have maybe a little bit more interest, to have some interest, but it's just it's tough because well, we as fans don't look. We don't really have the attention span for even as much TV as they have right now, right? We don't,
Hmm.
as it is. Um, and that's always going to be a thing. And so, but you can more consistently book the women's division than what they do right now. And I think one of the problems is that it's still, you know, I mean, it's just as far as like from a real world career standpoint, they all want to be fighting for one of the world championships. That's always been like really the only path to being used a lot consistently is to be in that picture. So they all want that, and but of course they all can't get it. But it kind of renders anything else that they do kind of less interesting, or
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
because the audience, as the audience, we know we've been trained that basically that the only women's matches that really matter are the ones for the big championships. And that nothing else really matters. That's what we've been told for
Hmm.
you know all the time, basically. Um, so getting like for example, like there's no equivalent on the women's side of the closest thing to like we just had a feud with Drew and Priest, and then last year we had Drew and Punk, and they weren't like title matches or whatever, right? I mean, the closest thing we've gotten that so far on the women's side lately is that Jade and Naomi. Um, and those come along maybe once every 2 or 3 years. And honestly, this is probably the only women's non-title feud that has been this big in a while, because they don't do them.
Yeah,
And
and to your point, that what you're saying there is basically, and this is very true. They would need to strengthen their mid card first. That's nothing to do with the titles
well, yeah,
to justify
and
that.
they
Also,
because and that's and because otherwise, I mean, they got this Jade and Naomi thing, and then but other than that, like a couple of years ago, they had Trish and
so
Becky, but
Wi-Fi is a little weird.
but they had Trish and Becky a couple of years ago, but that required Trish Stratus to come out of retirement, right? And then other than that, it's just they just don't do them very often, and uh,
Right.
or at least at a high level. I mean, yeah, I mean sometimes there are like lower level kind of feuds between on the women's roster, but they're between lower level women and they don't really catch fire. But there's no, I mean, there's I mean, they have the people to do them, but it's just they've centered everything around those titles so much that you know it's hard really to get to anything without that. And so it's just they just have to more that because like even now, I mean, Becky and Leah are feuding, but it's over the Intercontinental title, right? I
Yep.
mean, so there's still a title involved, and but there's I mean, there are feuds they could have had between some of the higher level women because what is the way you I mean for the past several years what's happened is basically for one of those top 5 or 6 women. They do it. They do a title program, and if they don't come out with the belt, then they take a vacation afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're just really. I mean, I mean, and they've all done it really. If or they've gotten in. There've been times where one of them has gotten injured, and they had to take time off like afterwards anyway. But I mean, the way it kind of goes, the way it's kind of gone is with those, because Lex had a little feud with Bianca a couple of years ago. She lost the title match, and then, and then she took off, and well, Lex has done it a couple of times. She's had a feud and gotten the title match, didn't win the title, and then, she just took off after that, for a while, and then, Charlotte's done that, and then, Bianca took a couple of months off a few years ago, and then, she just well, she broke her finger this time, but she
Yeah.
probably would have taken some time off this time anyway
Hmm.
after WrestleMania. I mean, so that's just kind of how they've been doing it. Like they'll put one of those women in the title program, and if they don't win, if they don't come out with the title, then they end up just taking time off for a while, and they they really could have had some of those women feud with each other and had some big feuds without the title involved, but they just haven't done that. So I think that's what it would take. They need, they need to do more of that kind of thing, or they need, and it's just, and but then also, then the other, of course, the other part of that though is then the more time they get, then now you have, the men's side will be getting less time,
Yeah.
and and they're not going to go quietly when it comes, um, it's just, I don't know. I mean, ideally, I mean, the ideal situation you wouldn't have as many TV shows, and you'd have a smaller roster. And I mean, for ideally, for as far as from a creative standpoint, and for us as viewers, they would have they would have fewer shows, TV shows, and they would have smaller rosters,
Yeah.
and then it wouldn't be an issue, right? Um, but they have 3 TV shows every week, and then they have these big rosters, so it creates kind of a mess basically as far as booking all this stuff consistently and all that kind of thing.
I will say this much: if Vince was still around here, I don't think it sees light of day. I think TKO led a company though, who's all they care about money, 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 money. They don't care about ratings. They want us just want to make money. And if there's space to put it on any platform, they're gonna do it. They're gonna at least attempt it. And I think there's a lot, there's a better chance of that happening now under TKO than it was under Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, they would, if somebody, again, if somebody gave them some money to do an hour, and even if it was just like video packages from Raw and SmackDown and a couple of matches thrown in,
Yeah,
right? If it was just that, you know, um, if somebody paid them to do an hour of that every week, they would absolutely do it. Yes.
yeah, because TKO right now it's whoring. I'm sorry, they're whoring the WWE right now.
Oh
So
yeah, and actually,
everything.
yeah, and actually, the guys at WrestleNomics did like a little write up of that, and because I subscribed to their Patreon thing, and so basically, I mean, it's all stock price kind of stuff because basically the Endeavor, that company that birthed kind of TKO and all of that, they've been behind on their stock valuations from day one, and and they're in a lot of debt, and they've basically been playing catch up. So
They use WWE, I think, as their
yeah,
proxy to
basically, yeah,
make money.
it's like they got bad credit and they married somebody with good credit.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it is, right?
Is it
So
is it possible that WWE hear me out a second here? Is it possible that right now WWE right now today take away Triple H, creative, all that stuff. I'm talking about the corporations, the executives. Is it possible that WWE right now is closer to WCW was in the late '90s in terms of like their care for the actual wrestling business? Like I don't think TKO, the people there, maybe The Rock to some degree because he has obviously history there, but the broader TKO executives, I don't think they give a fuck about the actual wrestling business
no,
as a
they don't.
whole.
No, it's an asset, and they're using it to try and squeeze out some more money so that because look at it like this, like getting rid of house shows does not help. That hurts your wrestling product
Yes, I
because it
agree.
hurts because you're taking away an affordable option for families and whatnot, but you're also taking away time for the wrestlers to work with each other and just get more experience and to get more experience working with each other, going into some of these bigger shows. Um, and so now, I mean, like a lot of this stuff really is dependent on how good the matches are. Really are dependent on if the people involved already have history working with each other.
Hmm.
Um, and because, like, for example, at WrestleMania, like, I mean, you had Seth Roman and Punk have been working together for years, and Io, Bianca, and Rhea had been working together for years. And it showed, it mattered, right?
Hmm.
It made a difference. Um, so, but now, in the past, like in the past, for example, Charlotte and Tiffany would have been in a bunch of tag team matches or whatever, or triple threat matches on house shows, and they'd been working together for like a month before, or a month or two before WrestleMania ever happened, right? And this time, this was their first time being in the ring together, and it showed. Um, so But so to that end, no, and TKO and the people who run, they're the one that made the call to ditch all the house shows in the United States because house shows are not profitable enough. So it's the profit margin wasn't there for the house shows, especially like in smaller markets. So that's why they got rid of house shows. It had nothing to do with the quality of the wrestling product. Um, these the way they're scheduling stuff now, right? It's not about quality of product. Like cramming together like 4 or 5 PLEs in 3 months is not about the quality of your wrestling product.
Nope.
It's about getting dates and locations and on the calendar basically. That's what it's about. And 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 again we talked about before just taking switching up on New Orleans like that. That's because that's to get money from Vegas because Vegas came through with some more money and they wanted they'd rather be out there. And it's you know that's that's what on the corporate side, that's what they're doing right now. They're finding every avenue to basically to get for somebody to hand them some money. Uh,
Maximize everything as much dollars as possible.
yeah, I'm
Even
that.
at the risk of alienating wrestling fans, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and so that is, I mean, that's pretty much the corporate strategy right now, which is why I mean, like people, putting Evolve on Tubi. That's just they got some money for it. The LFG thing, they got some money for it. This behind the curtain thing on Netflix. Netflix gave them some money for it.
The Untold
Uh,
on Unreal. What's Unreal? No, it's
Whatever it's called, I forgot. But
yeah.
yeah, and that's all this stuff is. It's all they just. And so to that end, what you were saying about the women's show, if somebody offers them some money,
They're gonna take it.
and again, like I said, they will probably just run some video recaps from Raw and SmackDown, and then throw in a couple of matches. With women maybe who don't wrestle on Raw and SmackDown or something.
Right.
And then it'd be like an hour. So yeah, I mean that probably well, like just the WWE speed thing that they do on Twitter.
You watched that, by the way, Speed?
Um, no. I mean, basically, I just
I saw it a few times, but I didn't really dive into it.
yeah. I mean, so I just like when I went to SmackDown, they recorded one of the matches before the show. Um, but that's I mean, but the only reason they're doing that is because Twitter gave them some money to do it.
There you go.
And so I mean, that's just kind of what it is right now. And us as fans, you know, you got to just don't burn yourself out. That's the tricky part, right? So I mean, which is why I've kind of turned down the intensity with which I have been watching a lot of this stuff. Because I don't, it's real easy to get burned out right now because there's
It
just so much.
is. Yeah, and that's why I don't. That's why I watch recaps. I watch the only shows I watch dedicated to it is the PLEs. The PLEs, the
Yeah,
main events, and I'll watch the recaps on YouTube, the 9-10 minute recaps, what happened. If there are segments that again that stood out, they'll put it for. I'll have it obviously on YouTube, and I'll watch those segments if they need watching, But otherwise, I'm not getting burned out on this thing. I'm not going to. And I my biggest fear, Rob, honestly, I might have said this on the show on Sunday. I'll say it again. Is that all this corporate shit, all this shit with the TKO and what they're doing? I don't want it interrupting my love for wrestling, and I'm fearing that at some point, if they keep doing what they're doing now with the prices and the I'm not against. Look, I'm a capitalist, man. I'm all for you know advertising and this and that stuff, but this is egregious. Like people say, well, the NFL does it too. No, but the NFL does it, but the NFL doesn't do it in the same way that WWE does it. Like NFL does it, and they're very smart about it. They don't put it. It's not always in your fucking face. This shit is in my face all the time, and it's almost taking away from the product sometimes. And I fear if they don't have the self awareness of what who their audience really is, they're gonna start losing viewers little by little.
yeah. I mean, I agree because right now, I mean, out of the three shows, like, okay, I do watch SmackDown, but the other one, like Raw and NXT, I just sometimes I have on, sometimes I don't, and
Mm-hmm.
and again, a lot of it's just it's conserving energy, and because I do watch some of AEW and I do watch some other TV shows, and now because the Knicks have been in the playoffs, I've been paying attention to that, and it's just we all have only so much time in the day and so much energy to expend, and you have to you conserve it if you don't conserve it on the front end, then you're just going to run out of it on the back end, and you're just going to miss everything. Um, and so yeah, I mean, so to that end, yeah, I mean, as far as doing a women's show, I just don't think. Again, if they get an offer, they're going to take it and they'll find some way to do it. But actually
Yeah,
making it work, creatively, I just don't see it. Yeah, I think it would mainly be just a video package show with a few original matches.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that one. All right, one last topic. Get you out of here. Um, this is something actually you mentioned on Saturday or Sunday. You said you were watching either a Chris Benoit match. I know I sent you a video. You and DJ on Minus Wrestling, your fellow co-hosts of that show. I sent you guys a video of a spot when he was in WCW He going against Macho Man. I think it was a tag team match and whatever. And it was a spot where Chris Benoit did a suicide dive outside the ring, and I'm assuming he hit his head on the guardrail, but where the crowd's at. It looked like he hit his head, and we've seen, obviously, if you don't know the story, Chris Benoit obviously one of the greatest stars in history of wrestling, but also committed a murder suicide in 2007, killing his son and his wife, and then killing himself after. And this is a topic I think we wrestling community we've all discussed about, Benoit's history in wrestling and how do we approach this, now know what we know now and this and that. And you had made a comment on I think on Saturday saying that, I can't. What was it? You can't watch any more Chris Benoit matches?
Yeah. Because all right, so just to catch everybody up, I've mentioned before how I took a break during most of the Ruthless Aggression era, but
Likewise.
then but a few years ago I started just watching stuff to catch up, like Raw and SmackDown and some of the PLEs from back then, just to catch up and see what I missed. And there were times where I would get to one of his matches and I would just couldn't do it. And um and I think it's because I mean it was just so graphic in nature.
Yeah.
And because I know you're like, because I want, if you're listening to this, you might say, well, you said you can watch Hulk Hogan matches. Why can you watch Hulk Hogan matches? Well, Hulk Hogan didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a difference between being a racist and actually murdering people, including a
Right.
child.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And it's just, and also knowing that, okay, he was in just a totally screwed up mental state because of all these bumps he was taking. His brain was mush, basically, and largely because he took insane, crazy bumps his whole
Mm-hmm.
career. He would do the diving headbutt as one of his big mad moves. Um, and he just, again, he took just all types of insane bumps during his whole career. And so when you're watching that, you're basically watching the things that turned him into a murderer, basically. Because again, his brain was mush. It was all messed up from getting hit in the head so many times. And so when you watch his match, you're literally watching the things that turned him into that. And so for me, I
Yeah.
just, um, yeah, I just, can't do it.
What happened that made you come to that? Were you watching a random match that he was in there and you just kind of like
Yeah,
hit you like, what the fuck? I can't watch this anymore.
because it was, and I was one of the PLEs, and I think, or yeah, I think it was one of, maybe, yeah, it was one of the PLEs that he'd been on, and it came around time for his match, and I'm just kind of sitting there watching it. I'm just like, I just get that sick feeling. It's just like, shit, man,
Yeah.
and so I just said, you know what, no, this ain't working, and and then so and then later on, tried another one, just to see maybe, because of course you don't want to say, maybe it's just this one time or whatever, and then so after a couple of attempts, a couple of times, it's just like, you know what, tried this a couple of times, can't, and same thing
Is
keeps happening,
is
that
this a
same
new feel?
feeling.
Is this a new feeling you've had now? Or you have always had this feeling for the last 18 years since the incident
Was
happened?
Well, because all right, well, I wasn't watching when it happened, so at
Right.
that, when it happened, I was just like, oh, that's, it's, well, I wasn't really watching, so it'd been years, and so I didn't, whatever kind of things people were going through who were watching at the time when it happened, I didn't, I didn't go through all of that because to me it was just, um, because growing up, like we were familiar with wrestlers dying way too early.
Yeah, drugs and other stuff. Right. Self inflicted
Yeah, I mean,
stuff.
it had happened so many times. And so, Now, well, him like killing 2 people before he killed himself, now that took it to a whole nother level. But yeah, I mean, we had seen, you know, during the 80s and 90s, and then and in the early 2000s. I mean, wrestlers dying young was not some anomaly. It was a pretty regular thing. Not regular, but it happened enough where if another one, when another one happened, like you weren't shocked, right? And now if it was somebody who you were really a big fan of, it would affect you more, but you were never shocked to hear about it
Right.
because it happened often enough. So, when I'd heard about it, I was, and I was like, man, that's fucked up. But at the same time, I was like, well, I wasn't shocked. The shock was that, that he killed 2 other people,
Yeah.
but I wasn't really watching. I wasn't actively watching at the time. So, you know, I guess like first, like when OJ happened, right? I
Yep.
mean, if that had happened, if OJ had done that while he was in his while he was playing, it would have a much different effect on people at the time than him doing it years later, right? Because you would have literally seen him run for 100 yards on a Sunday and been excited about it,
Yeah.
and then that night you would have turned on the news and be like, "Oh shit," right?
Yeah. He was literally
Um,
he was literally active. He was on the roster, literally active
yeah, and
wrestling.
so I mean, Benoit was active, and he was supposed to wrestle on a pay-per-view that day, and he wasn't there,
Hmm.
and he wasn't because he killed 2 people and killed himself. Um, and so imagine if OJ was supposed to be playing on Sunday, but then he was in the Bronco with AC on the run
He's the
during the
Gallons.
game.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's what it would have been like. You know, so it was just, or like, so it's just like knowing just the grisly nature of it all, and then also the fact that you know, when you watch his matches, in his case in particular, because again he took such nasty bumps, that you're literally watching the process of his brain getting destroyed and putting him in that mental state, um, where where he would kill 2 people. And so like it's just, yeah, and 'cause like with football, like with football we know about CTE and all that stuff, but there
Yeah.
hasn't been an active football player, miss a game and then like kill 2 people because his mental state was all jacked
He
up.
might have hurt himself or anything, but not
Yeah, yeah, and that's
because
but
for me, like you, I was also not only removed, I was far removed from wrestling at this point. 2007, I was not watching WWE in any form or fashion. I was removed, heavily removed. Like I heard about the story, obviously. I heard the story because of the news, not because of anything. I'm watching wrestling about it. It was for the news itself. Um, for me, like I do cringe though when I watch his matches, obviously, but I only cringe when I watch a match when I see the hits. Like I think because I was far removed from wrestling at the time, that I'm able to still watch his matches. Like I'm able to separate the two. Like I can watch him and watch the matches and say, "Wow, he's a great worker." Also, piece of shit. Obviously, I know the head spots and all that, and then watching the spots, especially too, is like, "Wow, oh my god!" I do cringe, yes, but can I still watch his matches? Yeah, I have no problem with that. And I think because I was far removed from it. I think if I was watching the product in 2007, for example, and this happened, and I might feel a little differently about it because I'm actually more attached to the product at the time. But because I didn't watch for a long time, I mean, look, even after 2007, I didn't watch until like 2019 again. So it didn't really. I was so far removed from that. So I get the whole thing. People not wanting to watch his matches and this and that, and you want to cancel him. And I get all that because the guy was obviously did what he did. But I had no problem separating the two in this situation only because I think I was far removed from that. And, you know, again, it's still art. It was still art, and he also worked with other wrestlers too. On top of that, and there's a lot of great matches that he did there that you have to at least acknowledge that he was really good, but you can
Yeah,
also acknowledge that he's also a piece of shit. So
and also like
I know my take may be popular everybody else, but that's just the one I've always gone with, honestly.
and I guess and for me also, I was a huge fan of his going back to WCW.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also the fact, you kind of feel like by rooting him on while he was doing all this crazy shit to himself, you know, you didn't exactly help him by cheering this shit on while he was doing all of this. I mean, it's a little different when you were a big fan of his and you were rooting him on while he was doing all of this crazy stuff for a while, at least
Mm-hmm.
until I'd stopped watching. Um, you do if you kind of feel like, well, okay, he was indulging himself like this a little bit because of people like me were cheering it on, and and feeling like guilty may not be the right word, but you do kind of feel like, man, you know,
I gotta tell you though, but even back then, like before he died, when I watched his matches in WCW and his early run WWE before I stopped watching those head dives, I would cringe back then though. Like, oh my god, that doesn't look good.
and like people who do that move, like a Dynamite Kid screwed himself up doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah. And people have been telling Daniel Bryan, just dude, stop doing that damn diving headbutt, stop doing that shit. Um, and so yeah, it's just man, and then cause like a lot of Mick Foley stuff, I can't watch, and it's just because because it's just too much, right?
I find the match with just The Rock at Royal Rumble
That one where
1999 is
he is
worse.
handcuffed, he got
It's
a
worse. It's worse than Hell in a Cell. I can watch Hell in a Cell. I can't watch the
yeah,
Rock match.
but that one, like, because his hands are handcuffed behind his back, he can't block anything, and
Hmm.
he's just taking those chairs straight to the head,
Yeah,
and yeah, and it's just like, and then it's just like, what? We didn't ask you to do all that, man, you know, and yeah, and some of it's just too much, and and Benoit he was doing too much almost every match. I mean,
yeah,
and that's not just in WWE because I mean, he worked in Japan for a while, and then of course in WCW. So I mean, he was going on like 20 years of that at,
yeah.
when, and adds up. And, look, because I know like it's kind of in vogue for the IWC loves to, rag on people like Randy Orton for, working safe and not, but I mean, again, you don't want these guys, you know, I'd rather you work safe and not have a brain full of mush,
Yeah,
that
I agree.
and do crazy things as a result.
Did you see that spot last night during the three-way match between
Oh yeah, so
Penta?
Gable got dropped on the head.
Yeah, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? Like WWE,
Yeah,
they're good about that kind of shit, but why are we doing that move? Why? Why?
yeah, and yeah, and it's just and because like Jim Cornette's talked about this, like just you can get the same kind of visual effect just having somebody do a good pile driver,
Yeah,
a good pile driver that somebody does safely. You know, somebody like and because he's talked about that he'd rather take a good safe pile driver from somebody who knows how to do it than to even go through a table,
hmm
right? So I mean, they're just things you don't have to do all of this stuff, and so and Chris Benoit did it all the time, and and so for me, watching his matches is just a reminder of what he it's a reminder of what he did to himself, and and what it led to.
yeah. Like I said, it's one of those things where, like, there's no right answer here. Like, I
No,
get it. Like, if you okay watching Benoit matches, I'm not gonna judge you for it. I get it. I get it. At the same time, if you don't want to watch it and it makes you cringe, I get it too. I get it too.
Yeah,
Um,
just look, there are people who there are people who cannot watch, who can't bring themselves to watch boxing. There are people who don't want to watch,
right.
ice hockey, or some who don't want to watch football for for a lot of same reasons.
Yep.
We all
Absolutely.
have we all have our own tolerances for things.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. If I get you out here, one last thing actually. We just found out today. The great Rick Derringer passed away today. Now, Rick Derringer, people may not know, he's a musician, obviously. So, why bring his name up? Of course. Well, Rick Derringer also is the guy that sang Hulk Hogan's Real American. He also sang the theme song for the Demolition theme song. Obviously a team that should be in the Rock and Roll, not Rock, W Hall of Fame, but obviously not due to political reasons. But Rick Derringer, obviously a big part of our childhood. Of course, if you're Hulkamaniac and Real American, that's the voice right there. He also has a couple other hits, of course, out there in addition to the stuff he did wrestling. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, for us, he was part of our childhood. He again, look, entrance songs help. There's much as part of getting anybody over as everything else, and he sang on some of at least two for sure of the best ones of that era. Real American and the Demolition entrance, and so people like him and oh, no, I can't remember the guy's name. The guy that did more recent stuff.
CFO? No.
Not CFO. The guy who was doing it before CFO.
Jim Johnson?
Yes, yes. So I mean, there's bigger contributors to this stuff as they matter as often as much as the wrestlers because they're part of it. And look, John Williams is as big a part of Star Wars as Harrison Ford and George Lucas. John Williams, the composer who you know composed all the orchestra soundtrack stuff for Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
He's every bit as important as Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and James Earl Jones. You know, he's every bit because that the music made the movie in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
those Real American, I mean, that song with Hulk Hogan was, I mean, it became part of just WWE lore. At the end of WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan posing and Real American playing in the background, and it just punctuated like it's like especially like at WrestleMania 3
Mm-hmm.
when he beats Andre, and and then that song playing while he's posing and all of that stuff after the match. That's as big a part of WWE lore as anything. And so,
I
yeah,
can
I mean,
argue. I can argue right now too. Also, like looking in, and maybe it's different in WCW, but or NWA. But can I argue that Real American might be the first real big wrestling theme song that really hit in a way where everything after that was the first really major theme song that stood out in pro wrestling because theme songs weren't wrestling a big thing prior to Vince Jr. taking over.
yeah,
Like
well,
you had a couple guys had
original,
themes here and there, and people will use like popular like songs, but
yeah,
Real America was the first like major theme song I think that launched. I mean, hell, you add that, and then like 2 years later they do the Pile Driver album, in '87, which had other theme songs there, of course, and
yeah.
but I feel like the Real America was the first massive theme song in pro wrestling history, like
I
original.
think the first massive original theme song, yes.
Yeah,
But before then, like they used again like the Road Warriors came out to Iron Man,
right.
and Randy Savage came out to Pomp and Circumstance, and Ric
Mm-hmm.
Flair came out to 2001, right? Uh, so yeah, as far as original songs, there was that one, and then of course, then there was there were a bunch of original songs that that were made in WWE, and then other than that, it was just like the Freebirds. Michael Hayes did "Bad Street USA," and that was him singing. It was an original song.
Yeah,
But I mean, that ball really got rolling with Real American. It did.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So again, rest in peace to Rick Derringer, who passed away
Yes.
today, age 77. All right, Rob, anyone to plug before we get out here?
Yeah, as always, you can hear me, DJ and Jason, every week on the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. And you can hear me every couple of weeks on the Rob the Genius podcast. And you can read stuff that I write on robthegenius.com. I have a review of AEW Double or Nothing up now because I watched it Sunday. So I have a review of it.
What time that show went on Sunday?
Midnight. Man.
That's
and
early.
Look, well, it's funny because as far like if you're just counting up like how many matches and how many and how good were the matches, like I'd say it was the most complete good show of the year that I've watched so far. Like they had 9 matches and none of them were bad.
Wow.
So the only knock on the show was it was too damn long, and some of the matches were too damn long. but
I've been begging
that,
Tony Khan for 6 years to cut this show short. He won't do it. He won't do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think 7 matches. I think is ideal for a pay-per-view. They had 9 Sunday.
Here's my thing. If you're gonna do a long show like this, Tony Khan, do it on a Saturday, where most people don't have to go to work the next day.
Yeah.
That's my biggest gripe. If you're gonna do a long show like this, do it on a Saturday, not on a Sunday.
Yeah. And I will say this: they finally, for the last 5 or 6 months, they have not, the way they've ended the show was not really in the ways that their core audience really dug. And so this time they ended the show this time with the kind of match that the people who were there from day one prefer. So to that end, I mean, this show finally did what this show did what was missing. What a lot of people felt has been missing. This show ended that way.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're happy about it. I'm glad fans are happy about that. Like I said, I will be watching AEW a little more now just to see if it's worth sticking to the next couple months as we get into the summer. Of course, I'm on Twitter or X at EJChristian7. Falls count anywhere. Part of Earnestly Podcast. You can, of course, find a podcast at any podcast catcher on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it. On the video side, of course, the YouTube page at youtube.com/at Earnestly Pod. On TikTok, Earnestly Pod. On Instagram, Earnestly Pod. Until the next episode, we will talk to you guys soon.